We have now come to the Q&A segment of the program. As mentioned, we'll be asking our two speakers your questions based on popular vote. We may not have the time to address every question posed, but we still encourage you to continue to ask or vote for questions you'd like to hear about. Dr. Meehan, are you ready for the first question?
I'm ready. It's halftime, so I won't be distracted.
All right, that's good. The first question sounds like this. A global supply glut and the Sheikh versus shale revolution have driven oil prices even lower. With that, the period of extended oil price seems very likely, with oil price touching a new low every week. When do you think we will reach rock bottom?
Well, I like to tell the story of the great opportunity that I had as SPE president. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of great opportunities, but one of the really enjoyable ones was a dinner I had, and I got to sit next to the Secretary General of OPEC. He's a nice guy, and he and I sat next door to each other, and we had a long time to talk. And I talked to him about that very question, and it's pretty clear to me that he doesn't know. And I don't know why I would know. I think there's a lot of good reasons to argue that we're going to have to recover in the next, year or two. But there are some other arguments that say we could be in for this for a very long time. The answer to that, of course, is when we work off this excess inventory. Inventories are at record levels. And by record, I mean people who keep the graphs of inventory by month had to go change the axes they were using. There was so much more inventory now. And the other problem, of course, is that we simply produce more than we consume right now. And this leads to lower prices, inevitable supply and demand. But as North American production drops, and it will, and as projects fall off development plans, and as natural decline takes in certain areas, we'll need more oil production. And the thing that will ultimately set that production is what the cost of the marginal supply is. And a lot of people believe that marginal supply is now North American shales. And so they're looking at numbers that are 50, 60, 70. That's the kind of number that people expect oil to go to when it recovers. I don't think very many people are expecting a recovery to $100 a barrel again, and we go straight to oil man's heaven. 65 is going to feel like oil man's heaven from here. So we really don't know that answer. And I think anyone who tells you they do, obviously they should be buying and selling crude oil futures instead of doing their regular day job.
The oil price touched a new low of US $33 and looked poised to break below even $30 next. It is now about the survival of the fittest. How can a national oil company such as Petronas work together with other oil majors and service companies to weather the storm?
I think thanks. It's a very good question. I see it like this. While if you think about where we are today, it's actually where we see our downstream counterparts were about 3-4 years ago. So if you think about it, when oil price was $100 plus, the downstream margin was very poor. And if you look at what the downstreamers have done, many of them will have to consolidate. They consolidate. They are very focused, and many of the plants, they actually collaborate in terms of supply chain, They're also looking at techniques, and they also collaborate in terms of performance benchmark so that they could actually be very, very good at it. So just imagine, many of plants, especially the one that I knew of in Petronas and also some of the one in Singapore, they have a very high level of reliability just because they were driven through this very poor margin that they had, very thin margin. They actually had to really make money at the back of maybe a margin of $2.50 or something like that. So their reliability number is, and also asset integrity number and reliability number went up to 95, 96, 98%. And they stay with it for many, many years. So now, if you think about it, how many upstream producing E&P companies where the platforms are in the 90s in terms of reliability? We didn't. Many of ours will be very happy continuously if you're able to go and get to 80 plus. Because the mindset is different. The mindset of the downstreamers is about I build one or two facilities, one facilities in 10 years, and try to maintain high level of availability and reliability for very, very long time. Reduce my costs as much as possible so that the highest cost is just the feedstock. The upstream E&P side, our mentality has been, at least in the past 5 years when margin was high, is to outrun our decline by building, by discovering and building more projects. There are actually opportunities in the looking back at, how do we look at existing assets, how do we prolong its life, how do we maximize what we call recovery, and also how do we make it more reliable. Can we actually push our availability and reliability number for all of our existing assets to more than 90%. And this is where we have to think about what kind of collaboration that we can build. Because sometimes collaboration, for the sake of collaboration, may not work. There must be a common interest. So this is where you look at in companies like Petronas. Doesn't matter really whether you're NOC or you are IOCs. The difference is only who is the shareholders. All of us have to, profit ensures sustainability. So whether you're NOCs or IOCs, you do have to make profits. Same with what we call service companies. So there is, this need to be sustainable, to be able to go and return positively dividend to our shareholders are going to be that ties that bind all of these companies together. We could actually do it in EOR. None of our EOR projects are actually done by us ourselves. We have one which is working in collaboration with Exxon and also the service companies. The one that we did in Semarang, that was between us and Schlumberger. The one that we did that we are doing in Baram Delta, that's with Shell. And so these are all kinds of collaboration that we have. Fundamentally, it's about finding partners that have common interests to make sure that all of us have something to gain through these difficult times. And I hope that these difficult times would actually give us much more discipline in looking at the overall both trying to find new fields and new production through those fields and being very disciplined with the existing assets. We can't use the technique that we used to have, trying to outrun our decline with finding more barrels.
You spoke about sustainability earlier, and the question sounds like this. Although climate change have become more of an importance these days, why is there no incentive for operators to address CO2 emission issues such as carbon capture and storage?
Well, this is it's a fair question, and it's got a simple answer. There is no carbon price. I'm not advocating a carbon price, but in a world where there's a price on carbon, natural gas has an advantage over coal. It also has there's going to be incentives to capture and store carbon. Somebody's got to sort of pay for that. Nobody wants to voluntarily go to the expense of storing carbon. Somebody's got to pay for it. And essentially that is the solution to CCS. Now you could argue whether or not CCS is in fact the best solution, how big an impact it might be, how it might be used. But let's assume that ultimately some sort of carbon price, whether it's taxes or prices, I'm not going to get into the details, now actually happens and carbon storage projects are possible. That all of a sudden finds a home for massive amounts of, injection wells, reservoir monitoring, reservoir description. Nobody's going to allow you to pump CO2 into a field until it's very well characterized and very well understood. And it's going to involve a lot of drilling, and it's going to involve a lot of reservoir monitoring, because if you're getting paid to put CO2 in, there's got to be some guarantees that it stays there and doesn't go leak out somewhere else. If and when a carbon pricing model happens, and I'm not advocating for or against, you will see a significant increases. Many companies, including my own, spent time and effort doing things related to carbon capture and storage, and everybody realized that it wasn't really going to go anywhere until there was carbon price.
Some of the successful mergers and consolidation are created during low oil price period, with the likes of Baker Hughes, Halliburton. We've even seen the big merger of ExxonMobil in the 90s. With more buy-over and merger of service companies, will the oil majors lose the market competitiveness offered by service companies once oil price stabilizes?
I think that's a tough question. I think the decision to merge, to merge or buy out each other, that usually has a very good intent of trying to consolidate, provide the economies of scale, what could make services more efficient. We can see that. I mean, if you look at it before, you can look at the history of ExxonMobil. When they bought the two of them together, they became the largest company in the world and have been consistently being able to be again one of the most efficient, capital efficient companies in the world, and help the advancement in many technologies in our industry. But there are also mergers that didn't work, isn't it? So those things will continue. But the one thing that I can see is that one of these days there will be there will always be a place for everybody to play. It's not that every company will always be having a place. There must be a place for every class of companies to be there. There'll be a merger in the service companies. What it does with the merger of service companies, it creates a few very big ones with a very big offering. But there'll be clients who will be looking for niche. Then there will be a smaller company that will come in with innovation and will try to deliver those niche. I think it's going to be the same with these IOCs as well, isn't it? So those evolution of the industry will continue. Yeah? And as far as the NOCs are concerned, I think they will do what I call opportunistic collaboration and working together with many people. By the nature of the shareholding, I don't think there'll be a merger between the NOCs, but they do a lot more collaboration. This industry is actually quite strange in nature. Usually, if you look at a car company, you don't see Ford and GM collaborating on a model. They compete, isn't it? But for this industry, we could see places in Brazil where 6, 7 companies outside of Brazil, they compete within that particular, even within Brazil, they compete, but within that particular opportunities, they collaborate. And they collaborate in different manner. They'll be collaborative in the operator side. There'll be collaboration in the service sector side. So this is a very dynamic and interesting industry. At the end of the day, it's about what value can we deliver to the business, to industry, and to the shareholders.
Companies are accruing cash to build optionality to invest when market is favorable. This is under the assumption that strategic assets are being let go potentially at below market price in midst of low oil price desperation. But we have not seen any of this happening just yet. Do you predict that any of this will be actually happening, or will we actually start seeing any fire sales?
Okay, I'm going to put on my soothsayer hat here. One of the things they teach you as SPE president is don't speculate about anything, especially the future. So this will be semi-unofficial, but let's look at this issue. You mentioned correctly that there's a lot of money out there that could be used to buy assets, a lot of it. But we haven't seen that many asset sales. We haven't seen that many companies. We're starting to see more go bankrupt, but we haven't seen that many of the intermediate and small size companies being sold and gobbled up by others. Now, part of that is because bank interest rates have been at historically low levels. And some of the small companies and even some of the reasonably large companies technically might be close to default on some of their payments if they didn't get more terms and better money from banks who have been so far pretty happy to give it to them. Well, maybe not happy, but compared to the alternative of owning an oil company, they have continued to pour a little bit of money in. That's not going to last much longer. I think what you're going to see is companies being forced to sell. And it's when companies are forced to sell that people get some good deals. We don't get good deals when somebody say, well, no, oil prices are about to come back, I'm not going to sell. Nobody wants to sell anticipating oil's going to stay at $30 a barrel because the value of their assets are just too low. They appear. You use the word optionality. And optionality is the right word. In fact, the real option value of assets is not just all the different things that you can do with the assets. You can infill drill, you can water flood, you can do all these other things. But it's the exposure to upside pricing that provides an additional optionality. And this is the concern that sellers have. And few offers have been made and few buyers are quite willing to jump in on that. I think the spread is starting to decline, and I'm anticipating if we maintain low oil prices for some period of time, you'll see a lot more sales. One thing that would help would be roughly constant oil pricing for some period of time. As long as oil prices continue to drop, not that many people really want to pull the trigger to buy. We'd like to see a kind of bottom set in, and then I think you'll see more purchases made. Again, that's speculation, something I don't do as SPE president, but that's my opinion.
We see a lot of companies actually preserving cash and making more holistic efforts to drive cost savings, to push costs down. And we've now seen companies shying away from big capital projects and focus on easy fills. There are little focus made on R&D. Hence, will we be able to see breakthrough in technology anytime soon?
That's a tough question to answer. But yes, we will see. So if the question is about people are spending less on R&D, whether we will see any breakthrough technology in the future. I think It depends. Sometimes, what we have seen, at least in Petronas, what I've seen is also some of the other companies that I've checked. It's actually now with the current margin that people get looking at the what do you call the low oil price. Almost every investment, including research, are actually now being queried. In the past, you could actually easily say, look, I'll put 0.5% of the profit into research and go find something. Today, people are a lot more disciplined in terms of what's the progress, what's a chance of this to become what you call realized. People are becoming actually more adept at working together with the university, working together with service companies, working together with what you call with their counterparts in different companies to actually work towards a joint research rather than single research. So while at the surface of it, it looks like as if we may have, people have less spend, therefore we might deprive ourselves of potential next bright light bulb. But in reality, what I see is that people actually use their, again, network, their innovativeness of not just finding solution, but also how to get people together. I think the industry will continue to find new innovative solution as they go along. I mean, if you think about it, you look at, deep water today, the fact that rig rates have come down significantly will also make now the rig provider think about which asset that I need to make sure that I can still work on, which asset do I need to go and put in the yard for mothball, and then got to go and find. It's no longer one company can actually make 2 years worth of sequence. Now the companies will have to start thinking about 4 or 5 companies to work together, and in there there'll also be a question of, do I need all the logging tools that you guys want, or could I actually use some of the ones that can actually be simplified, smaller runs? I think you will see maybe less. Maybe what I could say is that maybe we will have less progression from fundamental research into application research because of funding. But I think people will use a lot more, how could we put innovation from the clear innovation, distinctive innovation from the lab, the application lab into the field. As long as it can reduce some activities, reduce the cost overall, I think those things will be brought in.
Earlier, you mentioned about how more and more energy providers are actually uh, concentrating on renewables because it has a less impact to the environment. So having that in mind, how does the improved efficiency of renewables impact the future of oil and gas industry, at least in the next 20 years or so?
Well, it's a little hard to predict. I think we're going to see substantially expanded use of solar energy in a lot of places. Will solar energy impact, the total electric power generation capacity? Not really, not in the realm of capturing half of it. But could it go 5, 10%? In some countries, wind is a very big contributor to the total electric grid. In Denmark, something like 20% of their total electric power comes from wind. Denmark is a small country, and it's got a lot of shoreline, and they don't mind putting a lot of, it's a country that's got a long history of, being exposed to some high winds, and they don't seem to mind seeing them out there. Whereas we've got a few places where people have really objected to having wind turbines. And the number of wind turbines that would be required to make a meaningful impact is a big, big number. The amount of land that would be required with photovoltaic technology to make a big impact is a lot of land. And these projects are not environmental slam dunks themselves. I think they're going to be more appropriately done when there's a good application. You know, the solar for my home, if I wanted to add it, I could put solar panels, but it wouldn't power my whole house. But it would lower my electricity bills, and in 6 or 7 years, I could pay out the cost of my solar installation. That number gets down to, 3 years, I'll probably do it, along with, thousands and thousands of other people. And so we'll see increases in those usage. But the total demand for electricity is growing at such a high rate that even the most optimistic forecasts that I've read don't expect renewables to be 30 or 40% of our energy use by 2040 or 2050. They're much smaller numbers than that. Oil and gas are going to be the largest numbers. And the real question is going to be, will natural gas, how much of coal will it displace? Because the fastest growing fuel today, so the fastest growing energy source today is not solar, it's not wind, it's not biodiesel, it's coal. That's the fastest growing one. And it's simply speaking, it's the dirtiest and the highest CO2 emitter. And the reason it's growing so quickly is it's abundant and cheap. It's the worst thing that can happen to solar and wind is low oil prices. And with low oil prices, even when we had $100 a barrel, there were a fair amount of government subsidies going into the solar and wind projects. If they weren't commercial, if they needed subsidies at $100 a barrel, imagine how efficient and economic they are today. If you buy a Tesla, which is a car, it's a very nice car, about 10% of the purchase price in the US is refunded to you in your taxes. In Norway, you get a much better deal than that. So depending on what government subsidies are, people may move away from oil burning cars to electricity burning cars, which are in fact natural gas or coal or nuclear burning cars, because the electricity doesn't come from the electricity ferry. Your Tesla, it plugs into a wall, and that comes from the coal-fired power plant, or from the nuclear plant, or from the natural gas plant. And that's really the source of the car, and how efficiently it uses natural gas burned at a power plant, transmitted over the lines, put into your car, stored, and then turned into energy, compared to burning gasoline directly, is pretty much a push. Those are pretty close numbers with all the numbers put in. So I'm not sure that we'll see a dramatic change anytime soon. Now, what will the world be like in 2100? It's hard to say, but future thinkers love ideas like hydrogen, and they love ideas like fusion, or ways that would be nuclear-based things that are far safer and have no end products which have long-term storage problems or have nuclear weapon fuel problems. So ultimately, 100, 200, 300 years from now, I don't expect oil and gas to be the number one thing that we use for energy. But I expect it to be that through your lifetimes.
Earlier about developing and grooming the future leaders, because even in SPE alone, you've got a huge chunk of young professionals. But times are hard now, and we hear more and more layoffs happening because of cancellation of projects and so on. So for those who are already in the oil and gas industry, the young professionals, what advice do you have for them in starting their career?
I think it's the same, like I think like many others. If you're in the industry, first those who are impacted, I think SPE. Please do go into the SPE website because there are areas where SPE could actually help you on what could SPE help you with. It's again, our tenet is about volunteerism and network, and I think through that network you can actually find opportunities that can grow. But if you're already in and you continue to be in the industry, it's about whether it's a good time or bad times. It's about yourself developing your own self. It's about you taking the challenges and opportunities that's provided with you and to you, and maximize your and use it to the maximum effect. If you don't have any, if you have less chance to do conferences, to do events, it's the on the job training. There are plenty of knowledge, tacit knowledge within those around you, whether your colleagues within your company, it's also your colleagues outside of your company, your colleagues in the service industries, or things like that. We have actually a lot of learnings and knowledge within our community that we need to actually work together to help one another to grow. I think it's if I were to look at throughout the past 25 years that I've been in the industry, I think we had actually have a lot of the proliferation of a lot of classroom training. It's actually happened in the past 5 years when the margin was high, demand for people to go and start being deployed out to the field a lot, and we want everybody to be ready now. Yeah? I think going forward there'll be a lot more. Those will be tempered. So then the mode of growth in terms of capability, competencies, leadership attributes are going to be a lot more along the line of the 90s, where people actually have to go and prove themselves in the field. So for all of those who are out there still in the front line learning their trades, use your time wisely. Make yourself relevant to the industry. Yes, it is sometimes you have to be better than your colleagues, but at the same time, you also have to go like this. Your colleagues are going to be there as long as you are as well. If you work purely as a competitor, you knife one another as you go along. You know that this industry is very small. We will know what you did, and retribution will come. So it's the best way for us. I think we should go back to the tenet of SPE, which is again, it's about volunteerism. It's about stepping up. It's about actually building networks, building collaboration at a company level as well as individual level. I think that's always the sure shot to growth as a professional.
A lot of petroleum companies have reduced graduate intake as a cost-cutting measure. Thus, this affects enrollment into college as well. Are we anticipating another crew change?
Well, record enrollments last year in petroleum engineering around the world. In fact, I've spent probably as much time as any SPE president going to student chapters, and I continue to do that. I've really enjoyed seeing chapters all throughout the Asia Pacific area. And there is a lot of anxiety with those students about finding jobs. We talk at length about alternatives, including graduate school and including alternative career paths. We are already seeing the beginning of decreased enrollments. The enrollment levels are for incoming freshmen and sophomores are going down, and we're seeing people transferring out. This is more pronounced in certain areas of the world than others, and I think we will see it for several more years to come. It's inevitable. whether or not it's going to last so long that, you know, if for us to have this crew change hump happen because we really reduced enrollments for about a decade. And I somehow am a little, I think it's suspicious that we'll have this problem for a decade, but I certainly hope not. But if we're down that long and then followed by another upcycle, you know, shame on us for not seeing it and trying to plan ahead for that. I don't think it's going to last that long.
Just want to add a little bit on Dr. Meehan's comment. I think I agree with you. And also, I think going forward, if you look at some of the advent of analytics, data, big data, and things like that, I think going forward, we could actually imagine that what the number of people that we need in the future is going to be a lot less than what we have today. I think the industry actually learned. I think in the past 8-9 years, the industry have this almost like, you know, we have, we're facing with the challenge of this threat of crew change. So in reaction to that, the industry actually created what you call things, let's say, real-time operating centers, integrated operation type of centers, so that you could actually have, you know, less people in the site and actually more people, you know, small number of experts in certain location based on a real-time data stream that you have, and we look at trends to actually solve issues, whether it is what we call operational issues or whether it's reservoir issues. If you think about it now, I mean, Dr. Meehan mentioned about it just now, use of drones. We used to actually, in order for us, simple things. So for us, if we were to go and use our traditional method of doing a flare stack inspection, we'll have to go and turn off production. We got to go let the flare cool. People go up the stack. And that's usually 4 or 5 people getting involved, if not more, because you have to do your work permitting and stuff like that. But today, we could actually do the same work with 4 people with a suitcase and actually go there with no reduction in, with no stoppage of production, and get all the information, whether you want to have an infrared, whether you have, so the quality of the inspection is also a lot better. So then it's, what you see is that, yes, we may still need 4 people as per before, but it's a different 4 people than what we had before. It's the same what we see with production trend, we see it with logistics. I think the nature, whilst we may recruit less, but the nature of the kind of people that we need in the future will change. Doesn't mean that today's experience doesn't count anymore. But I think today's experience will actually be considered as what I call a statistical evidence of empirical observation. It will be put into numbers, trends, and be dissected by whether it's data analytics or people to make better decisions in the future.
All right, thank you, Dato'.
Yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our Q&A segment. We'd like to thank Dr. Meehan for spending time with us today, all the way from Houston. And of course, we'd also like to thank Dato' Anwar for taking time off his busy schedule to be with us today.
Nathan, thank you very much. Really appreciate that.
Thank you. Enjoyed it. Looking forward to seeing you at OTC Asia.
Will do. Thank you very much to all.
So that wraps up our program for today. Before we log off, we would like to remind the audience about OTC Asia 2016 that will be taking place from the 22nd to 25th March at the Kuala Lumpur Convention Center in Malaysia. Please be sure to register for OTC Asia before 25th January in order for you to be eligible for the early bird registration discounts. We appreciate all of you for joining us today, and once again, on behalf of SPE, we'd like to thank Petronas for all its support in making this event possible. To our live and virtual audiences, thank you very much for your attention and participation, and have a wonderful day ahead.